Hello guys, welcome to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Katrin. I'm a front-end developer living in Germany and I do vlogs and tech tutorials. In today's video I want to talk to you about accessibility first development. I already created a video about that once, but I still think that we do not pay enough attention to this topic, and that's why I decided to give another more detailed explanation and also to give you some thoughts or ideas about how you can actually start with accessibility. So first of all, I always start with telling that accessibility doesn't mean creating a new feature. It means giving access. It means removing existing barriers. When we talk about accessibility, we always talk about people with disabilities. And when we talk about people with disabilities, we always imagine someone in a wheelchair or a blind person. But we never think about that there are many types of disabilities or barriers. In the real life, imagine that you have a person in a wheelchair that tries to enter a building and the building has no ramp, has no elevator, and for example, this person needs to apply for a residence permit. That's it. He is in a very difficult situation. It's kind of situation of life-changing decision. For this person, it is already not clear what he can do in order to reach his goal of getting residence permit. Another example in web. For example, I'm filling out the form on the website where I can apply for a residence permit. I filled out all the fields and then I get error. And it says, check the red fields again, please. You didn't fill them right. And the problem is that I don't understand the color. So everything I see, it's everything in gray, and I have no idea what fields I didn't fill out the right way. So I'm kind of in the same situation. I can't continue, I can't get my residence permit. To sum up all that, let's understand why accessibility is so important. First of all, I hope you already understood that it is not important only for people with disabilities. The problem is that many people usually think that it is connected only to them, and they also, if they do not have anyone in their surroundings that has disabilities, and they think that it is small group that exists somewhere and it is not connected to me, so it is somewhere there. I have no idea, I don't want to have anything in common with that, so I don't care. But no, if we try to consider some real-life situations where even a usual person can have problem or a barrier, then I think that more people will understand how it is important. Accessibility is very interconnected with usability and good user experience. So when you develop your websites or your applications with accessibility in mind, you already create a better user experience for everyone. It has SEO benefits, because when you create your application thinking about screen readers or people who use AI or machines for translating some information, then you also create a good websites and a good website structure for SEO machines. So it's good for your business, it's good for marketing. And some countries have already legal requirements. For example, Italy. Here in Germany we had a new regulation that came into force in June previous year, and now all B2C, especially e-commerce or open websites, they have to be accessible. And it is only the starting point. After some point, I am sure that we will continue to improve the situation, and even if for now you work only with businesses or your system is a closed one, it is definitely going to happen also in this field. So again, just to sum up and to highlight who benefits from accessibility, I hope that you already understand that not only people with disabilities. Our life is very unexpected and we do not know what is going to happen to us tomorrow. And sometimes people also get disabilities temporarily. For example, you will have an eye surgeon and then you can't see for a few weeks, or you broke your arm and you can't use mouse for a few months. Then it's kind of difficult if some systems or websites were not developed with accessibility in mind. Elderly people, more and more people use web applications. I almost don't know who are older and they use, for example, application on the mobile and then use a 200% zoom in. Then, for example, if you didn't develop your app with responsiveness in mind, then everything just breaks and it's very difficult to use such website. You probably didn't think about it, but technical limitations, for example, slow network, is also a part of accessibility, because again, it is access to the internet. Sometimes we might have stressful situations. For example, you are going to have a long trip to another city for a few hours on the train, so you want to watch some videos and then these videos, for example, do not have subtitles and you forgot your headphones. Then it's kind of difficult because you can't watch without subtitles and you can't use volume. The same situation can happen also if you have a child and you put him to sleep. You can't watch something with the whole volume, so you need headphones or you need subtitles. So there are still some biases that exist around accessibility. One of them, I hope that I already broke, and it was that it is important only for one specific group of people with disabilities. Another one is that it is a one-time project, so we do it once and we forget about it. Or only if client really wants it and is going to pay for it. No, it is wrong, because sometimes people hear accessibility and they think, okay, tomorrow everything has to be perfect, we need to redo and redevelop everything so that everything is 100% accessible over one night. It is okay when your application is not 100% perfect, but the most important part is that you continually work on it. Every time you see some small things that you can improve, you improve it. And that's how we are going to move forward to the ideal state. Another bias is that it should come at the end. Definitely wrong, and then it's going to cost you a lot of money, because think about it, at the end of the project your client said, okay, yeah, I want this project to be accessible, and it appears to be that, for example, colors that were chosen, they have bad contrast, so then you need to pay again to the designer to rethink the colors of the website, and then you need to pay again to product owner to talk to clients and convince them that new colors are better than the old ones, and then to find compromises, and then you need to pay again to the developer to rewrite all the code base so that everything looks better. And also, for example, if no key navigation was integrated, then you need to rewrite even all the basic components so that the user can use it with keyboard. So it's much easier to start with accessibility in mind than to understand that you need to change everything in the end. For example, once we also started thinking about accessibility only from the middle of the project. It was not the worst situation, but it was still, we spent in the end a lot of time testing our app and finding out that we still had many problems, not only with contrast, but also really with keyboard navigation and other small fixes. So things that if you started from the very beginning developing with accessibility in mind, then you, after testing your app, you would have to change only small things or fix small things, but not to redo a lot of things and then to come to the situation when many developers have to waste their time on fixing these problems. Another bias is that accessibility is ugly. Also not true, it depends on design, it depends on how you find compromises between developers and designers and clients and product. Many accessibility features, you don't see them. So keyboard navigation, you don't see it. Areas, you don't see them. So the reality is that everything can be discussed. Accessible design is qualitative design, which means that it is a good design. So in order to sum up all of it, before that we had mobile first development, there is now accessibility first development. And it means that from the very beginning we think not if my application is accessible, but we think how will everyone experience this feature, these components, this application from I have to implement this in accessible way or make it compliant. We need to switch to I want to. I want that more users can use my application. And I think when you also present it in that way to your clients, then they will have nothing to argue, because everyone wants more users to use their websites and applications. So before we deep dive, few recommendations on how everyone in your team can actually influence the accessibility first development. For example, if you're a designer, color contrast must be non-negotiable. You need to check everything. It's not only, for example, text on the background of some button, but also the borders. For example, you check that the background of the input field has a good contrast with the background of the website. If not, then you need to add borders that have also a good contrast with the input background and with the background of the website. You need to check everything. All buttons, all interactive elements, they have to have clear focus state, so that when I go through the website with the tab key, then I see where I am located, because it's very confusing when you go through the menu, through some buttons, and you have no idea where you are, and then you can just click on something accidentally. Please provide generous touch targets. Especially nowadays we try to use more and more web applications on our mobile phones. So just imagine when you use icon buttons and the clickable target is very small, so it's almost impossible to touch it, to press it with your finger. So in that case, again, think about user and think about different situations. And the structure. Think about a good website structure, because even visually it's nicer to look at the website that has headings that have logical hierarchy, texts, all the landmarks are situated logically, all the information is located in a logical way, and then you are not confused. If you are product manager, then few things that you also can influence, it is how you communicate with the clients, and that you enlighten the clients that accessibility is not a bug and it is not a feature, it is a core of the whole development. And you need to explain that a great design is accessible design. So before we get to what we can do as developers, let's dive a little bit deeper. First question that we would like to answer, it is how accessibility is actually created in the browser. In general words, we write HTML and then it creates a DOM tree, which in the browser we see as visual UI. At the same time, there is created something else, and it is called accessibility tree. Why do we need it? It is important for assistive technologies, for example, screen readers. On the screen you can see now a simple example of the accessibility tree. So you see a very simple structure of the website, and you see that in accessibility tree it actually might look a little bit different. Because, for example, notes that do not have any rows, they usually are not getting into the accessibility tree. And let's have a look at even more specific example. For example, button, it is going to have a row in the accessibility tree button and a name. Many other components might also have different other characteristics. So you can find it in your Chrome DevTools. It is a small button and then you can just have a look at it. It is very helpful for debugging. And you probably know that there are many tags in HTML that we should use. Actually, when you use HTML, semantic HTML, it is your first step to accessibility first development. You already develop with accessibility in mind. Because usually the next step is that people start adding areas, but before you get to that, again, if you start with semantic HTML, you already develop with accessibility. The statistics actually show that websites where areas were implemented without thinking too much are less accessible than websites where nothing was touched. Let me prove it with an example. For example, you want to create a button, but you want to create it with just div and area. So if it is just a div, in accessibility tree you see that there is no role and no name. So you can fix it adding role button, and then it also sees name. But when you call it a button, it doesn't function like a button, because it's the same like if you call the bicycle a car, but it doesn't change anything. It's not going to work as a car because it has at least no engine and many other things that car has. So the same here. In order for it to work as a button, you need to add many things so that it really starts behaving itself as a button. So why to do it when you can just use HTML tag button? So again, let's return. Even aria has its first rule, which is saying that use aria only when you tried everything with HTML. And also then, when you decide, okay, I do need aria because I have, for example, a drop down, which is a complicated widget. And then you go, for example, to WCAG pattern and you check how you need to implement it. Just do not reinvent the wheel. Everything is already written how it should work and what it should look like. Because you need to take responsibility for what you are implementing. Because if you implement something wrong, then people are going to get confused and they are not going to understand how to use your widget. What's the point then? So to sum up, we use HTML as much as possible. When we already can't use only HTML, we decide to use area, but when we decide to use area, we are going to implement it in the right way, according to the patterns. So before we go to a few examples to show you how you can improve accessibility of even small components, let's talk about the developer's accessibility playbook, so to speak. So the first thing how you start with accessibility as a developer is what I mentioned already. You just implement everything using semantic HTML. After that, you go to area, but again, only for custom components and only when you implement everything in the right way. In order to check if you implemented everything in the right way, you test. At least you start with automatic tools. There is a XDev tool that you can add in your browser, and you can just scan the whole page and check if everything was implemented in the right way. It finds till 60% of the errors, and in my opinion it works perfectly. You can improve your websites only using this tool. It even finds important contrast problems, so start at least with it. After that, you do manual check. Unfortunately, there is no great tool for checking keyboard navigation, so just try to do the same functionalities that you do with your mouse, try to do it with the keyboard. Of course, if you have some DevOps knowledge, then you can implement all these automated tests into your pipeline. And the last step, it is already when everything gets very serious, it's a formal audit. For example, here in Germany we have bitfile tests, and it has a lot of rules how to test and what you need to test, from contrast to keyboard navigation and texts and information on your website. It is of course already when you have time and when it is a priority at your company, but all the steps before that you can do absolutely always. So now let's get to a few small examples in order to show you how small changes can improve accessibility of your website. And one of the components that we use everywhere, usually on our websites, is icon buttons. So here on the screen you can see a labeled icon button, and actually nothing is wrong with it. It has text in the accessibility tree. It has area hidden on the SVG itself, because sometimes some screen readers try to read SVG, so that's why it's better to put area hidden on them. And it also is going to have a row button. But what happens when we don't have labeled icon button, we have just usual icon button. Then in the accessibility tree you see row button, but there is no name. And then what the user, for example, who doesn't see is going to hear using screen reader, he is going to hear button, button, button. No idea what it does. So how to fix it? First of all, you can add area label, add text here. Sometimes there might be problems with area labels, because especially when you use a translation in your browser, and the same happens in a screen reader usually, and it might be so that screen reader doesn't translate area label. Best of the best approaches is to use span and add it as a text, but then use class visually hidden or SR only. You write kind of a CSS snippet where you hide it from the visual UI, but it still exists in your accessibility tree. And because we all love reuse components, we can create a visually hidden component, and we just can use it as a wrapper to our other texts that we don't want to show in UI, but we need them for screen readers. So to sum up what we learned, if you want to hide something from accessibility tree, you use area hidden. If you want to hide something visually but to leave it in accessibility tree, then you use visually hidden snippet in CSS. And of course, it is important again to remember about focus states. Sometimes designers tell you to remove outline because they don't like the standard browser outline styling, but they sometimes do not suggest anything in return. Remind them that actually you can change the color if it is not what they want, or if it is so much critical, you need to add instead of it borders or something else, but focus state should be communicated. Maximum you can find a compromise. If, for example, designer doesn't want that you see a focus on the mouse click, but you need to see it when you come with tab key, then, for example, you can use focus visible and outline. Now let's talk about text inputs. It's another component that we use a lot on our websites, everywhere in our forums. If we use placeholders, it is a very bad practice because accessibility tree doesn't see them. So eventually you are going to see in accessibility tree row text box but no name. And again, the user who doesn't see, he is going to hear text box, text box, text box, but have no idea what to do. Because of it, we have labels, and you need to connect your label with your input. Sometimes we also need to add some more information like hints or help text, and then you can add it as a text and connect it with your input, also using ID and area described by. Good news, area described by can accept many IDs. That's why also when you have errors and something wasn't filled out in the right way, you can also use ID of the error and connect it with the input, and then the error will be read by a screen reader. If you have a designer that says, no, I'm against labels, I want placeholders, you still can find a compromise and use our visually hidden technique and use placeholders for visual information, despite the fact that they have bad contrast, and visually hidden text for screen readers. And of course you can make our visually hidden component be generic. Also, just extra info, we usually use a lot of IDs on our website in order to connect things with each other, and also it's usually very helpful for keyboard navigation. That's why if you lack creativity and you need something to help you with that, React has useID hook. And another important part, error handling. So if you have an input that only has an asterisk saying that it is a required field, that's definitely not enough. Because again, the person who doesn't see, he is not going to understand that this input field is required. So you need to communicate it or in the label or also with a visually hidden technique. Also, sometimes we use required attribute, but designers do not like a default styling of the browser that says this field is required. So usually they ask to implement something ours. So in order to do it, please follow a triangle technique, because you need to communicate the information to the user. And to use only color is not enough. I hope you remember my example from the very beginning. So you need to use color, you need to use icon, for example, exclamation mark. It means that something needs your attention, and you need to use text. So you explicitly need to say what went wrong and how user can fix it. So to sum up, we talked about how you need to combine visual and semantic information, how you can connect your description and errors information with the input, and how you can validate your inputs in an accessible way. And as I also already told you about that, for more complex solutions you need to go to WCAG patterns and have a look how you need to implement them. Fortunately, we already have few libraries that implemented components with accessibility in mind. For example, Radix UI, which is used by ShadCN. So you can start using ShadCN and then have less headache. And again, testing tools that you already can use. I mentioned already XDev tool. There is also Lighthouse, and some people prefer that more, but personally I would recommend XDev tool and color contrast analyzer, because sometimes automatic tools cannot find all contrast problems on your website. So usually you should also check if colors have good contrast. To conclude, as I already mentioned in the beginning, the point is not to get to the 100% accessible state in one night. It is a process. It is a process of developing, of improving our website step by step. Even small things count, and then more and more users every time can use our applications. So that was it. If you have specific questions, let me know in the comments what you think. I also created already few tutorials on how to implement few components in accessible way, so one of them you can find right in the end of this video. So thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, it really helps my channel, and I see you in the next one. Have a great day!